The bad news is it was a wildly disappointing season for Baylor basketball. The good news is it's over.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another edition of Locked On Baylor. It's the basketball postgame show, and it's the last men's basketball postgame show for the year as Baylor just gets pummeled by top-seeded Duke. 89-66 is the final. And Baylor's season is over in the round of 32 for the fourth year in a row. So at least you can't say they're breaking tradition. Fourth year in a row, they do not get a second weekend in the NCAA tournament, where Tech gets another one. Arizona's going to get another one here. Iowa State's going to get another one. Houston's going to get like the billionth in a row. It sucks. Obviously, Duke was the heavy favorite in this one. They doubled the cover, if that makes sense, right? I think they were 11.5 and they won by 23. The first half was bad enough and it ended up getting worse in the second half. Now it kind of gets away from Baylor with just the kind of nuclear 3-point shooting that Duke had. But I mean, if they just shot normal from 3-point range tonight, they still would have won. 54.5% from three is disgusting, but even if they shoot at 35%, they win the game. Can't give you many stats because, again, no StatCast for some reason. I don't know if that's an NCAA tournament thing or what, but Baylor loses. Duke moves on. Goliath beats David in Raleigh. I know there's going to be a ton of comments about the officiating. It did suck, okay? When you're getting outshot at the free throw line, 19 attempts to 2 in the first half, there's something up there. And I'm mad about it too. But that's also just part of it. It sucks. It shouldn't be. But when you're playing number 1 seed Duke in Raleigh, like that is what's going. That's why the country still hates Duke. Like, you know what I mean? That's a big reason why right there. So before we get into all those comments, like I get it. Like I'm mad about it too, but Duke also is clearly, I mean, Baylor shouldn't have even been on the same floor as them in this game. Like it wasn't even close. And that's not even due to a lack of effort from the Bears. In fact, I loved the effort throughout most of this game, especially in the first half. Like they were treating every possession like it mattered, like it was a tournament game. You know, they weren't just being willy-nilly with it. They weren't playing too much ISO. I mean, the ISO that they played was forced by Duke, a top 5 defense in the country. They went to Norchad. I mean, Norchad was, again, the guy for them in this game, and he goes down with the third foul with 25 minutes left. And I tweeted it out, and I hate being right all the time, but I'm right all the time. It's my cross to bear. 24:45 left in the game. Norchad Omier gets his third foul, and the game's over. At that point, the game is over. Okay, I think it was, I won't do the quick math here. I think it was like a 5 or 7 point game when he had to check out with the third foul, and Duke goes on a 16-6 run to end the first half. And then you're down by 17, and that's ball game. It's over right there. And I'm not going to pin that on Norchad Omier, but I think you have to look inward as a program. Yeah, it sucks that you got a Josh O injury in February that put him out for the season, but we knew coming into this season you were thin at that position. And it absolutely reared its ugly head in this game. Like, the coaching staff has no one to blame but themselves for that. Whether it was mismanaging money or just not going after the extra big man, we said it in friggin' May last year. May. When they were saying they were closing up shop on the transfer portal after getting Norchad Omier, after missing out on Cliff Amori and Jonas Adu, who they looked like they had 100% crystal ball. And I said, Norchad Omier, that's great. That's a perfect pickup for Baylor. You need someone else for depth. And they didn't do it. They went out and they got a 20-year-old Croatian in July. And Marino Dubravcic, I feel for the kid. He wasn't ready for this level. And you're throwing him out there and saying, okay, go play Duke in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Go with God. Best of luck to you. Norchad's got to play 37 minutes a game when he's not in foul trouble. And then, of course, when he gets his fourth, they just keep him out there because what are you going to do? You're down 20 points. But that, and we're going to talk more about this on the show this week because I got to get more in depth into that. But that was an abject failure of roster building. And maybe it was spending too much money on some of these guys. Jeremy Roach, so much for a revenge game. I mean, 7 points, 3 rebounds, and an assist coming off the bench. Jaden Nunn hits 1 shot in the game. Like that, those guys were massive, massive, massive disappointments for them this year. And you needed huge games from Norchad and VJ. You didn't get them. VJ was fine in this game. He was aggressive early on. I think he went missing at points in this game, and it stinks that, Duke has a freshman top 5 pick in the NBA draft that they can go to when they need a basket. And Baylor has the same thing, but they can't go to him. But I mean, this season was just, I think, full of disappointment. I think going into this tournament, you're not surprised to see them lose in the second round. But when we flash it back to the beginning of this year with a number 8 preseason ranking, and like I was saying on this, it's got to be a second weekend team. It just has to be. We can't do this 4 years in a row. Here we are in March. They've done it 4 years in a row, and we got to watch everybody else do it the second weekend. Baylor and Kansas just bringing this conference down right now. It sucks. Like, this team should not have been a 9 seed based off what the roster was and where they were going into this season. And they shouldn't be this much worse than Duke. They just shouldn't. There's no excuses of that for me. I know they battled some injuries during the season, and by the time they get to the tournament, Josh O's the only one. And if they had actually gone after depth at that position, then it wouldn't have been this bad. But they didn't, and it is this bad. And I tweeted it out. It feels like 2021 was 20 years ago because they have not capitalized on that momentum whatsoever. They've had some good teams. This was obviously the worst of the teams since then, but you get judged on what you do in March. And they have not done jack in March since they won the national championship. And look, I'm wearing the shirt. We got the banner behind me. We'll always have the national championship, which is more than we ever thought at Baylor. But it sucks that they have not capitalized on it. And this is a massive offseason. I don't want to get too much into that because I want to do it this week. But just real quick, this is a massive offseason for Baylor basketball. Like, are you going to be contenders or pretenders? Are you just going to be okay coasting off that one national championship, which, look, that we'll have that forever. And there's plenty of schools that do not have that. Plenty of damn good basketball programs that don't have that. And we can coast off that forever, or we can try to be a consistent basketball power. And I'm sick of hearing about how great the regular season numbers are. Like, that's not what matters at the end of the day. That's not how you measure a blue blood. That's not how you measure the powerhouses in college basketball. We've won a national championship way more recently than Duke. But you know what? They've got 5 of them. They've made 17 Final Fours. They're going to the back-to-back Sweet 16s here. And they could win the national championship again this year. That's how you get judged. And right now, Baylor is in judgment time. Like, are you going to put up or shut up? I know there have been some bounces that haven't gone their way, both on and off the court the last few years, but that's not enough of an excuse. Other teams find a way. Arkansas was a 10 seed. They replaced their whole team and their coach from a team that's been pretty successful in March the last few years. And in year 1, Calipari puts a whole new team together, so we can bitch all we want about Baylor replacing 4 out of 5 starters. They put a whole new team together, and they just upset a number 2 seed, and they're in the Sweet 16. So the excuses are just not enough from me. They're just not. But let's go to the comments because I'm interested to hear how you guys think. Obviously, this game is not too much of a stunner. I mean, you never want to lose a game by 23 points in the NCAA tournament when you're a Power 4 team. But this itself is not a stunner, but how this season has gone certainly has been. And maybe I should have been woke to it after night one when I was on this live at 1 a.m. talking about how, yeah, this really stunk, but they'll be better than this. Don't worry. Don't take this 40-point loss to Gonzaga at face value. And there was not really a high point after that. Beating Kansas at home with their biggest blown lead in Kansas basketball history is great, but they did worse than you in the tournament. So, it's, it's just, this is, I'm not finding any positives today. Like, that's probably out the window. Bear the truth. Baylor playing small ball was forced to be extremely aggressive against a significantly larger team. Officials did not allow them to play as aggressively as they needed to. Yeah, and honestly, in the first couple minutes, I thought they were. I thought for once having Kip Kissinger call a game would actually go our way. They were going to call it like a Big 12 game. And I think they did for the first 4 minutes. And then after that, they didn't. Baylor worked really hard, but they just did not have the horses to keep up with this one. They just did not. I mean, this might as well have been Furman playing Duke today. LT says, Norchad carried us this season. Yeah. This is another one we'll have to do a separate segment on, but shout out to Norchad Omier, man. I mean, what a season he put together. He was willing them in the first half. His hands are much better than I thought they were. They're throwing bounce passes to him in the post against a 7-footer, and he's collecting and scoring quickly. I said it a couple of times, and I'll say it again. It does stink that he was the guy on this team because, even last year, that team really could have used that and run him as just a grit guy, double guy, while Yves Missi was doing all these crazy athletic things. Jalen Bridges is playing on the outside. Like, that would have been a perfect fit for last year's team and hopefully would have advanced them further. I could have said the same thing about 23, same thing about, 22, and certainly plenty of other Baylor teams in the past, but there was just too much room for him to make up on this 2025 team. He just wasn't going to do it, but it's too bad because he did have a great year. And I think was pretty underrated. LT also says about the other big time transfer they brought in. Dang, Roach could have had a real shot at a natty. I guess the transfer portal isn't all gold. Yep, but it's both ways. Would Duke be this good with this Jeremy Roach? I don't think so. Proctor goes 7 of 8 from 3, and Roach puts up 6 points? Sorry, I sold him well short. 7 points. He didn't start the game, didn't play in crunch time in the last game, so I don't know if he would have had a real shot at a natty. I think Duke is quite content with their decision to say, hey, Jeremy, we might take you back, but you're not going to be our point guard. And Baylor, who pays $500,000 to bring him in, I think they're ruining that decision. So I actually disagree. I don't think this Duke team is as good with Jeremy Roach on it. And we just saw it all season long. Why they wouldn't have been. And we saw it again today with how Proctor did. Grady's says, are we going to be good next year? I don't know, because you're gonna go, like we talked about last year, having to replace so many starters. You're doing the same thing again this year. Norchad's gone. Roach is gone. I think Celestine is gone. Nunn is gone. You've got to worry about, Rob Wright. Obviously, VJ's gone. You have to worry about Asamoah, who played 30 seconds in this game. He's become a complete non-factor on this team. For a guy who's a top 50 recruit, you don't always keep those when they play 2 minutes a game. That's tough to keep in 2025. So I don't know. I mean, if I had to guess right now, I don't think they're going to be really good. But once again, you've got to dip into the portal and hardcore dip into the portal and get 4 starters. And that's clearly proven to not work for Baylor. They thrived under the old transfer model. They really don't right now. They don't advance past the first weekend. They've gotten some good players, don't get me wrong, but they don't advance past the first weekend. And that's a failure when you're a team that's ranked most of the year. Obviously, this year was not the case, but the last 3 years, when you're a ranked team the whole season and you don't make the Sweet 16, that's a failure. And that's the standard that Baylor set with the national championship. So I don't, a long way of saying, I don't know. If I had to guess right now, I would doubt it. I would doubt that they're going to be a very, very good team. And Scotty Swingler brings up a great point. You can't blame the refs when Duke outplays you both ends of the court the entire game. They were the much better team. Yeah, and what was really damning about this, I thought Baylor put in a pretty good effort throughout most of this game. Again, I can't really knock their effort, but Duke was the better team. They kind of took a while to wake up. You know, Baylor was leading, and it was kind of back and forth for most of that first half. And then they smelled blood. I mean, what all great Sharks do, they smell blood in the water when Norchad goes to the bench and Marino Dubravcic has to go in there, and they attacked, and they made it a game that was out of reach by the time the halftime whistle came. So, Andrew, at 4:24, we're waiting. It does say when I'm going to go live, by the way. I need some time. Scotty Swingler and I are also wearing the same shirt. It's a coping mechanism, the 2021 national championship shirt. It used to be a good luck shirt. It's clearly not anymore, so I could say that out loud. Cade's kind of going off the question from a few questions ago. What commits and transfers are we looking at with our roster next year? I mean, at least you've got Cam Carr, who was, transferred from Tennessee, who came in December, early January. So he's practiced with the team, and maybe that goes more towards the old model of Scott Drew transfers when you had to redshirt them. It looks like they're going to get this kid from Wyoming. But other than that, man, you're not getting much. Tunde Yesufu, 5-star guy. I say you're not getting much, but you are getting this 5-star guy. You missed out on Koa Pete. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do for this team next year. Jim didn't have the horses to make a deep run. Great effort, but undermanned. We need better shooters, more big men in depth. They need to find experience in the portal. So I like a part of this comment here because I've already talked about them being undermanned. But really, what was more damning than them being undermanned, and I'll come back to it again, is guys you brought in to play certain roles that couldn't play those roles. Jeremy Roach could not be your most effective point guard. Jaden Nunn could not be, a 15-point-a-game guy, 40% three-point shooter. Jalen Celestine was a 40% three-point shooter coming in, and he was nowhere close to that. So it wasn't just what you were missing in terms of guys that weren't on your roster, but it was guys who just couldn't do the job. And that's what hurt Baylor more than the lack of depth, was they had guys who couldn't do the job. And I can't go too long on this post game because I'm watching. Ole Miss is now making a run and is up 6 in the Foster Pavilion over the ladies. So this could be just an all-time freaking awful day for Baylor basketball. So woohoo! Catch that fever of Baylor basketball at the Foster Pavilion, baby. Woo! Damn it, man. I'm crashing out on live. Thoughts on Dubravcic? What can I say, man? He wasn't ready. I can't blame him for that. This is a point I don't think that anyone would really argue with. One of my friends said earlier today, Scott needs to realize he won a natty on coached talent, not one and dones. Couldn't agree more. We've talked about this several times on the show. It's difficult to just stop recruiting the best players in the country in high school. And Baylor should be better at the portal. Like, other teams are better at the portal, right? Like UConn was great with the portal. That was a huge part of them winning the last 2 national championships. Florida, the team that knocked them out today, their best player, they got in the portal. Dalton Connect last year at Tennessee, like player of the year, like he got him out of the portal, so it's not just, the portal ruins college basketball. You can't win with the portal. Baylor's just not been good with it. They have not been good enough to do that. And Bear the Truth talks about, not just the portal of the players, but the coaching staff is a big unknown outside of Scott Drew. And they didn't do much to really raise their profile this year, did they? I'm not saying like, this coaching staff sucks or anything, because we just don't know a lot about them. You had continuity on the bench for so long. And Baylor has shown that they have not been able to bounce back. It's a weird way of putting this, but bounce back from prosperity. because then they have expectations. Then they are able to go out and get the best high school players in the country. And the biggest part about it is your assistants become head coaches, and they haven't replaced them. Not yet. Not yet. They had to replace a couple this year. So maybe there's some more time to a longer leash to give them there. But they have not answered that bell really well. Is this the actual president commenting? Trump 2024? Wow. Great to have the president on the live postcast, no matter how you feel about him. I can't believe the president of the United States, only the president of the United States would have a picture of the president of the United States and Trump 2024 as their username. We have to get shooters in size next year. Rob can be our playmaker and attacker and give him a knockdown shooter. We have to have big guards next to Wright. And then guys like Messi. I mean, I wish guys like Messi grew on trees. I mean, the guy's going to win Rookie of the Year in the NBA. A 7-footer who is just, a freakish athlete that you don't just get any of Messi, unfortunately. Tunde Yesufu can be some of that, but I love that. Like, just get him. Just get a Davion Mitchell and an Yves Messi and a Jared Butler, and we're just fine. Yeah, I don't think that's really how that works. Definitely you need better shooting next year. The constant of these Baylor teams the last 5-6 years has been they had good shooters up until this year. This was not a good three-point shooting team whatsoever. And you saw it in games like these where Duke could just go 3 for 2 on you most of that first half. And so, if Baylor had any shooters, the way they were playing in that first half and the way it took Duke a while to wake up, that could have been a 10, 12-point lead. Instead, it wasn't, because you don't have that. And I think that was a big reason why. So you definitely need to improve on shooting next year. That should be something that you can get cheap out of the portal. That shouldn't cost you a ton, is what I would think on that. Bear the Truth says, you think Scott Drew should take a page out of Dave Aranda's book regarding NIL and portal? I need more of a definition on that, I think, because they hit the portal and they spend plenty of money. They spend money. They spent a lot of money on this roster and it didn't work. That's the thing. I don't think they're spending money well. Football, I mean, Dave has not thrown out a ton of money for anyone except DeQuan Finn, and that obviously didn't work, but he's gotten plug and play starters. So I think they've done it well, but I don't think they've spent money. I think this was, or spent money well. I think this was a bad investment year for them. They just need to get better at that. So, I mean, I guess to some extent, yeah, because Dave Aranda had a better year. Jack says, at least I can cheer for the remaining Big 12 teams. Whoop, whoop, yay. I love rooting for Texas Tech. Golly, if I can't get back to this TV and root my ass off for Iowa State. I don't care. I like that the Big 12 does well, but I'm not spending my time and my fanatical energy to root for Iowa State or BYU. I'm not doing it. I'm happy that they're advancing, and I'll probably quote unquote root for them over someone in another conference, but I don't care about that. Baylor lost. I do a show about Baylor. I went to Baylor, we obviously bring in a bunch of Big 12 news in here, but I'm happy that those teams are in the Sweet 16. And it's funny that Kansas was the only one that lost in the opening round. I think that's funny. Preston says, bad feeling that Langston will transfer. I'd love to know anything behind that. If there's something that you've heard or just have the feeling for. I understand, right? I mean, he is a guy who has battled injuries. Obviously, there sounded like there was some off the court stuff with the rumors that we heard last year, or excuse me, this year. So he might just be looking for a fresh start. And he does have a year. He's only a junior. I think he will, if he hasn't already graduated, he will graduate this year. So I can see that. I don't know if I'm let's, this is why it's going to happen. But I mean, maybe. Yeah. And that would stink for Baylor in terms of a veteran guy you can bring back. But as we said plenty this year and last year, the kid plays hard. He plays a certain style, and it leads to him getting hurt a lot. And That's kind of taking the good with the bad. So even if you do get him back, how much are you gonna have of him? Javier says, I'm a Zona fan and ref should just wore a Duke jersey. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. That's college basketball, man. That's the game. Duke's going to get a lot of the calls. They're going to get the whistle. Yeah, I've got to wrap this up here soon. We got 6 minutes left in a 5-point game, and Ole Miss and Baylor on the women's side. And we'll obviously talk about that in tomorrow's episode, which I'll be recording quite soon here. What else we got? This is Scotty Swinger bringing back. Please bear with me. He says he's going to go on and talk about Baylor football. That's what we all need right now. And obviously, we'll be talking some more football this week on this show as well. And if the ladies do not come back here, we'll be talking a lot of football this week, so that I don't take too many pills. But we need some optimism. We need something to look forward to for Baylor. And thank God they turned this thing around in football this year, or else this would be a very, very long offseason. Baylor, man, we need a scorer from a low-level school that we can develop. Would love that. Would love that. It's a little bit easier said than done, but it can be done. And I'm surprised that Baylor hasn't really done that specific model yet, which they had done with Maceo Teague and Adam Flagler. They've gotten lower level guys, right? Like Ray J. Dennis, not a scorer. But they haven't gotten one of those guys that's, just shot 40% from three the last 2 years at, some Northern Iowa school, and you bring them in and develop them for 2 years and they become a big part of the program. That's again, I don't want to get too much into it. I kind of already have, but that's more that I want to talk about this week. Baylor lost 89-66 to Duke. It's over. The slipper was the wrong size. Cinderella did not go to the ball. She fell down the stairs, and the end of the slipper actually impaled her neck. She's in the ICU. That's what has happened to Baylor's Cinderella story in pretty quick succession here. It didn't really get off the ground. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought about this game and about this season and what Baylor needs to do going forward, because it is judgment time for this program this offseason. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Those of you who are here live, those of you watching afterwards, give the video a like. It's going to help out the channel a lot. You ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcast. So like, subscribe, comment. It helps us out. And then tune in next time for your favorite show. Locked On Baylor.